Okay, let's get started. So, hi everyone, my name is Umi. I lead business development at Breeze. Breeze is a Lightning infrastructure company. We provide products and tools to help users and developers build and use the Lightning Network non-custodially. And I'm very excited to moderate the panel today on Bitcoin product market fit. Would you please give a brief intro of yourselves and your respective companies?
Sure. My name is Will Cole. I'm the head of product at... Hello? There we go. I'm Will Cole. I'm the head of product at Zapright. You can see over there, we make Bitcoin payments easy. Used to work at Unchained and before Bitcoin Stack Overflow.
Hello. Hi, my name is Darina Oumanski. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Slice. Slice is an edtech company with a twist utilizing Bitcoin with micro payouts. Thank you very much for having us today.
And so the first question I have for you both, it's an interesting topic. It's Bitcoin product market fit. And to kind of take a step back, I wanted to ask, do you see yourselves as Bitcoin companies and how? And for Slice, I know it's interesting. I read a recent blog that you posted on that. So I think it's interesting that you can be a Bitcoin company from different perspectives in different ways. And there's a lot of people building on Bitcoin here. So we'd love to kind of see how you see yourselves as Bitcoin companies. Maybe Darina to start.
That's an interesting question. Thank you very much. Indeed, we just recently wrote a decent blog post about our take on if we see ourselves as a Bitcoin company, how people see us, specifically the end users that we have and the ecosystem within the Bitcoin Lightning space. And the opinions are torn. We are absolutely accepting that we came with an idea that has been validated along in the market already by several successful companies, but we came to a different time, to a right time where Lightning Network just being born, so to say, and it solved a huge problem for us in the sense of enabling worldwide frictionless instant payouts that none of the fiat Lightning payouts is even close to come and enable us to do so. For the first time, we are able, oh my God, I don't know why I'm shaking so much. For the first time, we are able to actually assign microseconds attention a value in sats. And that technology didn't exist before. Comparing to any fiat provider, it would be so much friction along the way, fees. And our company is providing young people a pocket money between $1 to $10 a month. You don't want to leave 25% of that with PayPal when withdrawing $1. And that's the reason Lightning is super good for us and enabled us to scale super big. Now, after 2 years being online, seeing that we are close to 650,000 downloads. Yesterday, we hit 50,000 daily active users. And 80% of them overwhelmingly choosing Lightning Network as payout without having an idea about Bitcoin, being actually surprised along the way. Oh, there is Satoshis. We didn't know about that. And the beauty of the Bitcoin is that it validated itself over many, many years. And I don't need to explain to our end users another shit token or any other environment. And those technology just bringing together, putting at the dots, thanks for companies who enabled us to do so, like ZBD, like Ibex, like Vulture, who actually pay money to license themselves and take the burden that we do not need to carry. And this is why we are able to actually return the profit and to break even. Without that, that would not be happening with Slice. So if you ask me, are we a Bitcoin company? I'm not sure I'm in position to answer this question, but I have been reading a lot of smart people like Michael Saylor or Ross Stevens, who would say everyone who contributes to the ecosystem growing and flourishing is a Bitcoin company. So here I am, guilty as it is.
Mine's a little bit easier. Zapright's unequivocally a Bitcoin company. We enable or help facilitate Bitcoin payments. We do it side by side with fiat payments. We're realistic that modern businesses, still have some small reason to accept US dollars or euros in certain cases. We allow our customers to punish people for taking fiat if they want to by charging a premium. But yes, absolutely, Zaprite's a Bitcoin company, Bitcoin native, all those things.
And I think that's interesting because there's two different ways. I mean, there's no one way to be a Bitcoin company. You can solve a customer's Bitcoin problem, or you can solve a customer's problem with Bitcoin, like Slice is doing. So that's why I think it's great to hear both of your perspectives, especially digging into product market fit. And you mentioned that you offer Bitcoin alongside fiat. And also with Slice, I know you enable payments either with PayPal or Bitcoin. Was curious if there was anything with product market fit, what led to the decision to offer this optionality? There are some companies that do strictly 100% Bitcoin. When you were thinking about product market fit, what led you to offer this dual, both fiat and Bitcoin, for both of your products?
I think in our case, to come closer to the product market fit in decision making was listening to our audience very carefully and look at the data. And by grinding the data and digging into the feedback, go to the very deep level of talking to community. Discord is a huge community hub in our case and gives us an opportunity to talk directly to early testers. People assign themselves a role. We exactly know who to approach to get any sort of feedback on our product. And by listening closer to the community, having user-centric product is already a good start for any company to reach product market fit. So that was our case. Of course, then numbers are saying clearly 80% of users decide to go with Lightning. I don't need another justification or convincing there. It's solved already.
Yeah, if you allow me to answer this question, I want to extend it a little bit with a definition of product market fit for some people who might not. I mean, it's somewhat self-explanatory, but the idea around product market fit has been around for, at least a decade, although it's always existed. But in order for there to be product market fit, there has to be a market, right? So by definition, if it's a niche or it's very, very small, you can't really have product market fit because in those really, really small markets, it's hard to develop a business if you don't have customers and there's not a market for it. And there's kind of two ways to approach this in general. One is you outcompete people in an existing market that's very, very big, right? And usually that's because you have some regulatory foothold, or you invent something new, or the market's been dominated by people that have sort of aged out of their businesses, and there's an opportunity. Or the most exciting way to do it is that there is a small market, but it is a growing market, right? And you get in at the right time to where the market grows with your company. Inventing a market is the worst way to do this, right? Is that there's no market, you start a product, and then somehow you create a marketplace around your product. It does happen, but it's the hardest way to do it. So when I think about like this, I think about that a lot when I think of our strategy to have Bitcoin payments side by side with dollars, is that there's a market for payments, and it's massive, and it includes fiat money. And if we were going to go out there and say, Bitcoin only payments, and if you're a lawyer and you're trying to invoice your clients and you're only allowing them to pay in Bitcoin, to be perfectly honest, that market is very, very small, which means that we would not be able to reach product market fit unless we created this entire Bitcoin marketplace ourselves. One of our coworkers, Parker Lewis, talks about this, is that Bitcoiners are fond of talking about the circular economy. Well, the circular economy doesn't actually really just happen, right? It either exists or it doesn't. But the way it comes into existence is that a lot of individuals make individual decisions, and every time one of those individuals makes a decision, you have that sort of circle starting to form, right? And so the strategy of allowing these two payments together is because there's a market for it, right? And then we're going to ride that wave of the Bitcoin market growing. I'll get into more later after the questions.
Oh, that's great. And I've also heard product market fit being defined as the combination of persistence and pivots, and wanted to kind of dig in there where there were any instances of where you had to pivot throughout your product strategy, and when did you actually determine the need for such a change?
If I may answer that anecdotally, for us, the first product market fit was when the server broke together at 2 a.m. in the morning, and instead of desperation, we called it nice, it's working out. It's too many users on our website, and our student discount isn't carrying it anymore, and we need to start to act mature and get it out. So every time part of our infrastructure, is it being database or the hosting server solution, is crumbling important, we're seeing that there are some tensions there because we're growing too fast and need to upgrade our infrastructure. Instead of being sad about cost increasing and burn rate being higher, we're saying it's a product market fit. And ever since joking about this, so it most became a meme within our company, at least. And I'm very much riding this wave, to be honest. Let it crash and burn. The more users we get, the more able we spend money for better infrastructure.
Yeah, I know a lot of people think like this around like, the persistence, pivoting, persistence definitely. However, like the pivoting stuff I think is really overrated in general, meaning that like that's just people that picked really bad markets to get into in the first place, which is a lack of preparation and just a failure that shouldn't be celebrated in general, is that you have to pick good markets. Like I forget who it is. One of the VC firms actually has something smart to say on this, which is like the market rules everything, right? Mm-hmm. And the reason you see people pivoting over and over and over again is either their product can't compete in that market or they picked a crappy market. So when I think about like, where Zapright is that it's okay to be early as long as that market grows, right? That's the bet, right? That's why it's risk, right? Is that the market for Bitcoin payments has to grow. And I don't think that Zapright unilaterally is going to determine whether or not that happens. I think more than anything, where you see that like pivoting happen is that anytime you find product market fit, you needed some sort of something had to happen before to build off of, right? Like you can't build Google without Akamai, almost. And like, and so, when I think about Zapright, I had just come from Unchained Capital where, in 2018, 2019, when I was trying to decide how to contribute in Bitcoin, the first question I needed to answer for any Bitcoin use case, for anyone is, can I keep my Bitcoin safe? And I thought that the custody model needed maturity in the Bitcoin space. I couldn't even think about payments because if I wanted to think about payments, the first question you have to answer if you're going to accept Bitcoin as payments is, where do I keep it? How do I keep it safe? So I felt like there were these building blocks in order to have these sort of proto-atomic units to build off of in order to make later markets for Bitcoin. So fast forward 3-4 years from working at Unchained, I feel like the custody landscape has matured quite a bit to the point where I can start thinking about payments. Why did all the early payments companies why were they almost unilaterally, except for BTC Pay Server, really custodial in nature? Well, it's because the custody options out there were not robust. People didn't have preconceived, sort of ideals of where they would keep their Bitcoin, and so the payment processor itself was the custodian of the Bitcoin. There was a wallet, right? And that's just mimicking what happens in the fiat world. When you use Stripe or you use any of the fiat payment processors, they take custody and then they pay you out. And we've seen how that goes. That really eliminates one of the greatest benefits of transacting in Bitcoin, is that you reduce that counterparty risk if you use it in a certain way. So without custody, payments didn't really make sense to me. But now that we had custody, then the market for payments can actually start to take off and actually take advantage of the Bitcoin native properties. So I don't think of it in terms of pivoting. I think of it in terms of like identifying the prerequisites for a market to exist and then picking a good market, being early enough to where you don't have a lot of competition, and then you can dominate a market.
Mm-hmm. And I wanted to touch on something that you mentioned before, Darina, about kind of receiving customer feedback from your Discord. And I wanted to ask both of you, what are kind of the current feedback loops that you have in place to get from your customers? And especially if there's a specific instance of customer feedback you've received that you've actually implemented in terms of a new feature.
Oh yeah, I can go first. So one of the telltale signs that you have product market fit, and if you haven't worked in a startup, this might seem quaint, but it means everything in the early days, is that you don't have big marketing budgets, so everything's word of mouth, right? And if there is no word of mouth, you got a problem. You can tell that very early on, within the first 6 months of your product existing in the market. So the customer feedback comes from, hey, I heard from X that you did this, but I need why thing, right? We get it from our friends at PlebLab here. Very recently, Carr was complaining to me in the back of the Commons yesterday, which is actually, he was very apologetic about it, very nice, but like he was complaining about a certain feature, and that's how we get better, right? And Carr, for instance, needed a certain fiat payment rail in order to take Bitcoin the way he wanted to take it. So we get that feedback in, we can iterate pretty quickly, but it's really a retail type thing. It's one by one in the early days. And it's usually because they heard from someone else, or they paid a Zaprite invoice as like, one of their suppliers sent them an invoice and they had to pay it. And they're like, wait, I could do that too, right? So it seems very small potatoes in the early days. It's like, oh, someone just says something, but it's not more complicated than that, right? But if you're not hearing that from people, then it's a bad sign.
Yeah, silence crickets. It's not good.
It's not good. Yeah. You might need to pivot. You picked a bad word.
Exactly. Darina?
I think in our case, I'm struggling to think of any single item or product feature that we released that was not based on product feedback coming from community directly or on request from the community. I think as a co-founder, a founder, or even working in a startup, at some point you don't see the forest because of the trees. So you definitely need a feedback loop comes from community, your advisor, mentors, whatever, even shareholders of the company who have just a third party look at not day-to-day operation. And yeah, every feature that Slice has came either from directly request by community or through first validation, secret test. We have an extra group on Discord who had just assigned the roles of secret test and testing crazy stuff that is far, far away from the initial browser extension that we came up with at the first place. We are very happy and thankful for those people. Those people become your best advocates. This is core of your community. From that, everything else is growing. Those people become your moderators. They become your first employees. They become your company culture. If they are happy, everything works smooth. Satisfy the 500 core people that are giving you the feedback, taking your time. And as a company that tries to assign value to your time and attention, we are more than thankful to give them some sats to, get them into the company, get them into the team, make them feel special. And this is, I think, how we build a product, how we build a community, how you create successful business.
Ooh, can I give one more example?
Yes, please.
A really great indicator that you have something special, like you picked a good market, is when people use your product off-label, like off-label drugs or something like that, where they come to you and they're like, for us at Zaprite, it's always point of sale. We have a lot of people asking us about point of sale. It doesn't work for point of sale really, right? But people still use it for a point of sale because it's better than the current things in the market for point of sale, even though we haven't optimized that for that at all, right? And it's not necessarily even a signal that you have to build a point of sale right this second, because the people that are using it that way are using it off label. They've hacked a way to do that. But in a startup, like if you think that your original market, for us, it's invoices and e-commerce, is a big enough market to go after, you can be patient around those things. But it's also a really, really good sign when people use your product off label, as it were.
Mm-hmm. And you're getting a lot of feedback from different customers. There's probably then prioritization that you need to put in place in terms of feature development. Is there what leads to, having you how do you prioritize the feature development? And I know you recently released a great teams and organization feature as well.
I can say how it goes. At any organization, you find out who the stakeholders are, and you sit in a room and you say, okay, what are we going to do? Right now, like as this relates to product market fit, there's kind of a formula for everything, right? And while there's differences in different markets and different companies, it's all kind of the same. What are we prioritizing comes down to how hard is it going to be to build, and what is the demand for the actual feature, right? And in the early days, it might be, I heard from 3 people they want to do this, right? And so literally John and Parker and Tom and I will sit in a room, usually for about an hour and a half, and we'll have a list of 50 things that we could possibly spend our time on. We kind of vote on it in a way. I aggregate it at the very, very end. I submit to them a list of like, well, here's 50 things, but we're only going to do these 3. And we all say, okay, let's go. Right. When I was at Stack Overflow and it was way, 350 people and your stakeholders are, 40, 50 of them, you do the same thing. Right. And it's about the inputs that you let into that process. So it might be John and I discussing it, but we're coming loaded with a bunch of inputs, whether that's data or it's anecdotes we've heard from people, or it's a wait list of people that have been asking us about an API for 4 months, right? And then we choose to prioritize that thing. But more than anything, I try to keep things like thematic, right? Is that I'll use the point of sale, not because we're not going to do it, we're going to do it eventually, but every single time we've done these prioritization sessions, point of sales on the list, and we just say, not now. We're going to focus on e-commerce. We're going to focus on invoicing. If we're not the best in those 2 markets, then we're not going to be the best in point of sale. And so keep yourself constrained as much as you can. Listen to your customers. Allow those inputs to come in, and then don't labor on it too much. Actually spend most of your time actually doing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So we are a company with 2 developers and extremely cost-efficient structure. We don't have the luxury of sort of having a long roadmap and dreaming about when somebody is having time to that. Every decision is being made currently at what brings us faster to breaking even and profitability. Then we can hire more people, can start dreaming and polishing the product to nice features that we would like to have. But currently, if it's not fixing the product, that's not working, it's definitely adding a feature that brings us towards profitability faster in order to hire more developers and have the choice. But absolutely, the way we decide upon that, and still there are some choices what to do then first, is starting simple from urgent, not urgent, important, not important matrix, or going deeper into almost Fibonacci matrix, where we as free co-founders used to struggle with decision making sometimes between us. It's just the way it goes, and we decided to let the math decide, and that's a sort of sense for what's important. So there are tools there where you can absolutely, if you're in a great position to have a choice, where you absolutely can see how much effort what would take and what brings you faster to your goal. And that's the only one goal in a startup. It's getting to not needing to raise money anymore.
I want to point out one thing, like for anyone like this idea of like roadmaps, the more mature your company is, the more valuable like a longer term roadmap is. But in general, I think carrying around a lot of like product inventory, like things you're supposed to do, is a terrible idea. Like roadmaps are kind of stupid. And the earlier you are in your product, journey and your company journey, the more useless they are. Like when we do our prioritization stuff right now, like I'm kind of still in the Unchained mindset of like a more mature company where we can plan 6 months ahead. Our inventory is useless within like 3 weeks. And we're like, everything's different and we're not going to do any of those things that we were planning out. So it's a huge waste of time. I'm writing a series right now called The Invariance of Software Development. It's on thetoolsofignorance.xyz, little plug. But I almost made like don't carry inventory one of the invariants, but it's not really true, for much more mature companies, is that you really don't want to keep a lot of product inventory around, especially early on, because then you're just working on the important problems of 4 months ago. Keep inventory, especially early on.
And I kind of want to add on that. So a lot of the builders here, they're early stage, obviously, and they're constrained with resources, like developers, like you mentioned, Darina. What are the processes you go through when you decide whether you build, buy, or partner? When you have certain things on your priority, and what's worked, what hasn't worked, or your experiences there?
If you're not working on money or financial services or something really important, just buy everything. Like build nothing but your product. However, when you're dealing with people's money and sensitive information, I've kind of had to so like at Stack Overflow, the answer was always just like buy whatever tool does the thing. Don't build anything internally. That's a really dumb way to do it. But in Unchained or at Zaprite, where you're dealing with much more sensitive information, you kind of have to build because trusted third parties are security holes, and your reputation is everything. And if you're going to trust, I don't know, what's the name of one of those marketing CRMs that always gets hacked? I can't even think of their names now. HubSpot or something like that. It's like, yeah, I mean, like we've all run into this, right? It's not a bad thing to do that, but your security posture and your third-party posture really depends on the type of market you're serving and the type of customer information that you have. So, I made the mistake at Unchained trusting HubSpot, right? That was a bad idea. We should have been doing more of that stuff internally. And at Zapright, even though we don't have KYC, we don't have the type of information we had at Unchained, we're putting that off as long as we can. Like every single conversation we have is how do we host it locally? How do we spend a little bit more time and effort because I think it's less about like the productivity side, more about the reputation you have with your customer base. Now, if you're not dealing with money, if you're not dealing with people's KYC information, things like that, it's usually a waste of time to go out and build your own CRM.
I pretty much agree, and it really depends on the business you're in, what market offers you for tooling. It's hard to say per se for everyone. There is a recipe. In our case, there's tons of complex infrastructure that we have tried to purchase outside. We saw that it's not sufficient, came up with an idea to develop our own, but to white label it at the end and not, to open it up to the market and monetize it. And I'm always a big fan of going outside and buying outside, hiring outside, going to places like Upworks and Fiverr and give a Pakistani guys a chance. It could be your best developer in 2 years from now. And all this amazing stuff happened to us when we did something that we needed to do because of desperation situation of budget. And it turned out to be a super positive thing for us. So I'm in no way anyone who would say everything in-house is better and needs to be done right. Absolutely, you should go and buy stuff you can buy.
Speaking of product market fit, the best product ever created for a computer ever. They can solve your CRM problems. They can solve your funnel problems. They can solve your, whatever problems is called Excel. And it doesn't have to be shared with anyone. And it lives on your machine and you should use it.
And curious, is there anything else that you felt different from, you've both worked in previously non-Bitcoin fiat roles as well, and working on product there. In terms of differences that you felt working at Bitcoin companies like Unchained, Zapright, Slice now, and with like the trust with tools, I hadn't actually even thought of that. Is there anything else that comes to mind that's kind of you wouldn't have thought, but now is kind of part of your daily life that you have to think about, be aware of when you're operating with a product that is using Bitcoin or is with Bitcoin?
If I may ask, it's going to be a short one. The only difference for me is working in a Bitcoin startup is that so many people, for some reason, care what is it a Bitcoin startup or not, and about the ecosystem, which seems to be, it looks to me like people want to open it up, but as soon as you open it up, there seems to be a problem with that. That's a little bit weird, but that's the only difference I noticed. Other than that, it's a difference between cooperative world and startup world. That is a huge difference to me, yes. And I can only say from my side, everything that Andrei said to the point of being obnoxiously correct that he said, and it sucks to be founder. However, it's the first time in my life, I'm doing it for 10 years now, working for myself. It's for 10 years, never felt like work again as I left corporate. So it's to everyone else. Of course, I look super old and gray hair and everything. All the negatives comes with that. Yes, absolutely. But I never have been more happy in my life at the same time. So you go figure.
I find them to be extraordinarily different. It's the same in like you're just building software, and building software is building software. Whether you're building a Bitcoin company, like good programmers can build a good Bitcoin business and can build, internet forum. However, I find the markets to be very, very different. Building web apps at Stack Overflow, for instance, like what was the market? The market was people who read and write things on the internet, right? I needed people to read stuff and I needed people to write in a box. And that was a pretty established market by the time Stack Overflow came along. And we just had to have the right prompt to get you to write something, and then the high quality of content to get you to read it, right? It was pretty straightforward. The market was there. In Bitcoin, like I would argue, like until 2013, 2014, Bitcoin was a very bad market to build in because there wasn't really a market, which is why there are very few companies out there. I mean, a few. Coinbase made it, Cumberland OTC made it through. Zappo didn't make it. It was a bad market back then. And then like the people that timed it around that 2013, 2014 timeframe grew with that market. A good example is like at Unchained. When I talked to Rodolfo at CoinKite, they tried to build Unchained. That was their first product, right? It was way too early. The market wasn't growing with them. They had to pivot because they picked a shitty market. Mm-hmm. And then Unchained comes along 5 years later, and we even looked kind of silly for a couple of years. In 2019, no one gave a shit about multisig, right? In 2020, no one gave a shit about multisig. We looked stupid. And then in 2021, something happened. The market came. It wasn't because of Unchained, but we were opportunistic and we were there when it happened. That's kind of the sweet spot. And so when you're just building web apps in general, it's like you don't have as many market problems as you do in Bitcoin. Timing is everything on this type of stuff. And if you can time it in that perfect thing where you're there early, 1, 2, 3 years with the runway to pick up whenever that market picks up. And if you can put your thumb on the scale at all by having a really good product, then you have magic. But I never built in a emerging market before. And Bitcoin, for a lot of the use cases, is still an emerging market. Like custody, not emerging anymore. If you have a great idea, you can go in there and compete, and there's a nice market for it. Payments, we'll see, right? Like we're hoping that the market catches up to us. We want to extend our runway. It hasn't hit yet, but I think the timing's right.
Great. And I know we're getting close to lunch. Kind of one last more generic question. Any advice that you have for the builders here today that, has been a little bit of a North Star or something that you could share in terms of tips that have led to both of your successes?
Just do it.
Just do it.
I would say the most underrated thing, after you've picked a market to get into is to have a robust vision and strategy for what you want to build. I think that it's been fetishized to iterate and fail and iterate and fail and go through all these cycles. If you're trying to pick out copy for a marketing campaign, that's fine. But if you're trying to build a business, like it's really damaging when you have to pivot over and over and over again, right? And so having a vision, sticking to that vision, and having a strategy that you can execute on over years, not carrying a bunch of product inventory, but having a vision for what that world's supposed to look like in a few years is entirely underrated, and most people avoid the responsibility.
Well, thank you both so much, Will and Darina.